I want to be somebody who makes and helps make things that are relevant to people's interests.
What's up, guys? I did this interview for Lawrence Tech's audio engineering program, and it's not uploaded publicly anywhere, so I figured I would just kind of drop it on YouTube. Maybe you'll find it helpful. Maybe you'll find it educational, and if you don't, maybe you'll find it entertaining, and if you don't, sorry. Anyway, here it goes.
This first thing, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, my name is Adam Shepard. I am an audio engineer originally from Farmington. Working at a Hamtramck. I do a bunch of live sound. I'm in a bunch of music projects, and that's about it. It's all as relevant, at least.
So, what first inspired you to pursue a career in audio?
I would say because I was already doing it. Like, I started for fun, just like hobbies, recording my own music, recording my friends' music. And so it was kind of natural then when I was like, okay, it's like college age time, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't want to go to school, I'm just going to start the thing. I'm just going to do the thing I'm already doing, but start charging money for it.
Mm-hmm. So what was your first job related to this industry?
Like my first gig, or like maybe first like job title?
I guess both.
All right, so I would say definitely just like audio engineer, just recording and mixing and stuff like that. I did it for my band because I was in a black metal project with this one other guy from Royal Oak, and he was like in charge of everything. He was doing all of the like engineering and all of the writing and everything, and my job was just to play guitar. And at some point I was like, hey, I think I can mix this. And he's like, you want to try? I was like, yeah, I'm going to try. And he's like, okay, that was a lot better than what I've been doing. He's like, all right, you can mix the stuff now. So then from then on, I was like, yeah, maybe I'm like guitar mixer guy, you know, like I'm one of those dudes. So that really just kind of turned into doing that for everyone I can, everyone who will let me.
Did you have any like personal mentors when you were starting out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was 18, I went to North Carolina to study with a guy named Jamie King, who does he does all of Between the Buried and Me's production. He does all of the Contortionists production, and a bunch of other bands. But like that was like my whole scene at the time. I was like, oh, like prog core, you know, progressive death metal stuff. I don't know. All the bands that thought Dream Theater and Breakdowns were really cool. He's like kind of was the guy in that scene. So I hit him up. I emailed him, and he just like responded, which was weird to me. Like being like 18, you know, fresh, like just worked on my own stuff. I was like, man, this guy's like the real deal. And he's like, hey, just so you know, like I do education sessions. Like if you want to come down to my studio, I'll like teach you how to record for real. And I was like, yeah, that sounds sweet. So that was my probably first and really only mentor in that field. The rest of it was just like the internet and trial and error, like brutal trial and error. 5 years of trial and error before that.
That's awesome though. Cool opportunity.
No, it was amazing, dude. I still talk to him like every day. I'm like, hey, Dad, does my mix sound good?
So, when would you say was like the really big point when you started to consider yourself a professional as just something this was like a hobby?
I think the second I got paid for it, the second that somebody else who wasn't just my friend was willing to hire me to work on it, I was like, that's it. Like that set the bar, you know? And I was like, the rest of it is just from there.
So when you're starting to do a mix, do you have like a specific method or workflow that you always do first?
Yes, it depends on the genre a lot though. So because I do a lot of different things, like sometimes I'm doing acoustic music where there are no drums, and sometimes I'm doing like, you know, standard rock band, like guitar, drum, bass stuff, and then sometimes it's electronic or hip hop. So like the drums are drum tracks or like samples, you know, they're not like a drum kit. So it all varies, but like I do have like starting templates for everything, where most things I'll usually try to start with like a kick drum or a bass or whatever like the lowest frequency instrument is. I try to start with that because it's really hard to me to like fit that stuff in later after you have everything else. So I usually start with like designing that element of the mix, raising all the levels around it, and then the second thing is whatever I perceived to be the most important element of the mix, like writing wise, not necessarily frequency wise. So like it always starts with the bass, and then everything else comes in. Like really, like I'm saying this takes like 5 minutes from after like the bass to the rest of the levels. It's like very quick. I'm not like making a lot of decisions then. And then I'll focus whatever. So like in hip hop, it's like the vocal's the whole thing. So I will go right into that after, getting all the like hi-hats and whatever. And like none of that stuff really matters that much. You know what I mean? It's all about the vocal. If it's metal, it's usually like the guitar for me would come after that. And what's interesting is it's not even really a genre thing, because there are like, I have had like a rapper come to me and be like, hey, make sure this guitar pops. And then I've had bands where are like, I don't care what our guitars sound like, we need to get this bass tone right. You know what I mean? So it really kind of depends on the project, but I do, that is usually like the pretty quick 3-part version of how I do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Bass, everything, feature, and then the rest.
What bands would you say inspired your style the most?
Of mixing or writing, because they're very different.
Let's go with mixing.
Mixing, it's going to be a lot of like mid-career Whitechapel for metal is really influential. Run the Jewels' second album, that RTJ2, is like pretty much the gold standard for hip-hop mixing for me, at least. I don't listen to a lot of Kanye, but all of his songs, like that's another like just gold platinum standard mix. I really like rock sounds from the 90s, so like Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and then for the like 2000s rock, I really like Nickelback, I really like Shinedown, I really like radio rock from the 2000s. Those are like some of the just first comes to mind when I think about like references, but a lot of it mostly like I'm not the kind of mixer where I want it to sound like me. I want it to sound like the band. You know what I mean? So it's really kind of like, what are their references they're giving me? But I mean, if I'm just being totally like selfish or nobody has any direction, those are like some of the stuff I'm pulling from.
Okay. How has your production style changed over time?
Well, it used to be pee-pee poo-poo garbage, and now it's at least usable. Where, like, I think the biggest differences have been in just my ear, like ability to differentiate elements and like hear, and then execution of what I'm hearing. So being like, oh, this is, here's the issues with this. I can hear it way faster, and then I know what to do with it way faster. Other than that, definitely routing. Like just getting the session to look right and to not have to like search for like, oh, where are my tracks? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I would say like setup has been the biggest difference of anything. Cause I mean, whatever the newest, hottest mic is or whatever the weird parallel compression mixing technique is of the day, you know what I mean? Like that shit doesn't matter. What matters is that you know how to get around your sessions, and that's something I'm just always working on. So I'm hoping that it's, well, I'm not hoping, I'm telling you, it's definitely better than it used to be. Like, especially like moving from DAWs, dude, I don't know how I used to mix in FL Studio like 60 track metal songs, like, and that was when it was like FL10 maybe, FL9, like nightmare. So going over to a more updated DAW and like actually laying out sessions appropriately has been a super critical change for me.
What are your current career goals?
That's another interesting thing because it's kind of always changing. Like, I think of them as like tracks, sort of. So like the track I was on when I started was I want to be a mixer. And then, because I don't feel confident enough to be an artist. And then as I mix for a while and then I start writing more and then I start mixing what I'm writing and I'm like, maybe I want to be an artist too. So I'll be like an artist mixer. And then like now I'm doing work with like content creation for software companies, which is something that I never would have like thought about when all I was doing was mixing, right? So like the goalposts just kind of keep changing, and as I achieve like part of a goal, right? So you get like 25% through like a mixing career, it's like you find other opportunities that might work out better. So it's kind of like a stair step sort of thing, you know, where it's like I got part of the way into this and then kind of pivoted and started doing this, which is building on that. And as for like current goal, I want to be like, I just want to be one of those guys. You know what I mean? Like those guys that you're just like, oh, like Adam Shepard does this and like did this the other day, and it's like, did you see that new video? Did you hear that new song? Did you hear that new mix? Like I want to be somebody who makes and helps make things that are relevant to people's interests and like, you know, get talked about, get the clicks. You need the clicks to stay relevant, I think, unfortunately.
If you could do one thing differently in your like professional career, what would you say that it was?
Like past actions?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is almost like one word of advice to myself if I could give it, but I think it's always kind of going to be the same thing, was to just waste less time, be more productive, like prioritize optimization above maybe some of the more technical things, because it's like, it doesn't matter if you can make it doesn't matter if you can make like the perfect guitar sound if you can't get the song done, you know what I mean? So like stuff like that, I would say just like years at a time, I wish I could have done everything 20% faster, just so I could have gotten, 20% farther with it. I think time management definitely is something that isn't talked about enough in like, especially in like mixing production worlds and stuff like that. So I think it's like, I don't know. I know it's kind of a broad answer, but there's not really like a specific like, oh man, I really wish I didn't notch at 4K that one time. That like ruined my career. You know what I mean? It's like, I just wish I could have done everything I did, but faster.
Kind of building off of that, what would be one piece of general advice you'd give for somebody just starting out in this industry?
Get badass as fast as you can. Do the most work. Just do everything you can do. Mix everything, record everything, try to play everything. I don't know, achieve 2% of your goal on everything you can do at once, and then start to figure out kind of like what you're good at, right? And nurture that a little more. But for the most part, just do it. Just freaking do it. Don't ask for permission to do it. Don't look for a reason not to do it. Like, start it. Start today. Start yesterday. Do that. Whatever you can do, just get it done. There's two advices. The second one I would say is don't worry about how it comes out, because you're going to get better and you're going to suck. These are the two truths of doing anything worth doing. Is like, you will start out not being good at a thing, and if you do the thing, you will become good at the thing. So don't worry about if you're good enough for it, unless you're trying to go like sell yourself to Metallica after a year or something like that. Like, don't do that, but like, you know what I mean? Just get it done and don't give a shit what anybody says about it.
What's your current studio setup? I know you just said that you moved studios.
It is a 100 square foot bedroom that I mix out of and record vocals. Yeah, it's not like a super ideal space, but it is a really workable one that I know very well, which is real. That's like, actually, you know what? Going back to advice stuff, man, people really care about mixing environments. Like what your room treatment is, what headphones are using, what speakers are using, and like if I can add a third thing, none of that matters. It will be years before what type of speakers are using actually make a difference into what you're making. Like, because just like use what you've got and learn it. Retroactive third piece of advice for free.
With your current setup, like what is some of the favorite parts of it? What are like your highlights?
What do you mean, like feature-wise?
Yeah, like your personal favorite part of it, or like a favorite software that you might have.
So my favorite part of it is that it's not a shared space anymore. I've had a lot of shared spaces. So just like totally selfishly being able to stay up till 4 a.m. writing like songs is cool, and not bothering anybody with it. But as far as like a piece or like gear or something like that, it's probably just my chain, right? It's like the whole thing, because it's all kind of one thing to me. Like I have one preamp, one converter, one microphone, one guitar processor, and it's like I just know them super well. So it's probably my one chain is my favorite thing with it. Yeah, I'm not really in love with any of the software. Like, it's all kind of the same thing to me. You know what I mean? Like, no EQ in the world is like, oh, that's the one. You know what I mean? I mean, you could give me a Yamaha mixer right now, and I could make a song sound better. So yeah, I think just like the input chain probably is my short answer for that.
Okay.
SM7, Focusrite, ISA, Links Converter, Axe-Effects. Those 4 items. They're my sweet babies.
How does stuff like that you were doing with Kluner, John Penman, how would you say that like the main difference is apart just music style from what you're doing now with 313?
So those are all layered projects. Like, none of those are time periods. They're all consistent. So I think that's actually another really fun part about it is like it could be the same day I'm doing both of those projects. You know what I mean? Differences are definitely workflow. I mean, 313 is pretty guitar centric, and like, you know, is specifically not a vibe. It's not supposed to be like super. Well, no, it is supposed to be fun, but it's not supposed to just feel good. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be raw and hurt a little. Whereas the other two, like most of my hip hop projects, are very purposely smooth, and like, you know, what I'm referencing is like chart topping hip hop, pop, rap stuff. So, I mean, the biggest difference straight up is just amount of gain and distortion. Frequency response is like not really that different. It's just how driven the frequencies are. They have a lot of bass in their music. They have a lot of mids. I don't know. It's kind of hard to put into words.
So kind of going off of that, with 313, it's a pretty unique band, especially having the 2 vocalists as well. It's like, how much more difficult is that with the mixing and recording?
It's not that much. It's no more difficult to record. It just takes more time. For mixing, it is actually a little more challenging because they have very distinct voices. Usually, how I think about it from a composition aspect is it's like they each fulfill different roles, kind of like soprano, alto, like stuff like that, you know what I mean? Like, they both have different ranges and roles, but when it actually comes time to mix it, like to make them gel, they each have a separate bus, like a separate mix bus that their individual tracks go through that have different types and amounts of distortion, different frequency response, even different compression, because I mean, they are different volumes. Yeah, I don't know how, I mean, honestly, I could go on about it forever. I don't know how specific you want that information to be. Like, in general, it's just they're different sources, so they got to get treated differently, which, you know, I mean, adds just X% more to each session, where you normally would just have one layered vocalist. Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't, the specifics aren't that interesting.
So, last question I have, do you have any, like, personal dream projects? What would be the one for you?
Dude, so many. I want to make a beat for Aesop Rock. That would be a dream project. I want to, I used to really want to mix a Between the Buried and Me song, but I don't know if I want that gig anymore. But I would love to work with them in some capacity. I'd like to get the guy from Dream Theater on a song, any one of them, like any instrument they play, if it's bass, drums, keys, singing, whatever, any of those members on a song would be kind of like dream material, no pun intended. Who are some other people? I don't have that many like lofty dreams for music and production because they all feel really realistic to me. Like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say like a dream project because it feels attainable. It feels like everyone in the world is like a few degrees of separation away now with email and social media and stuff like that. Like, if you want a project bad enough and you're qualified for it, that's the other the hard part is getting qualified for it, so they would actually take you seriously. But you can reach anybody. You can just email them, and most of them might not respond, but some of them will, and it only takes one, So I don't think too much about oh, what if I could? Oh man, wouldn't that be great? I'm just like, am I ready to do that? Should I do that? If I can, how do I do it? And let's do it. You know what I mean? Finding a network is the most important thing you can do. I mean, that's where all of your clients are going to come from for a long time. Actually, maybe forever, because word of mouth is the only thing that matters. As far as a reputation goes, is that cool bands, you record cool bands, and then cool bands get cooler and tell their cool band friends that you are doing cool things. And as long as you, dude, honestly, as long as you do one project right, you're so much better off than if you're, not doing anything at all, I guess, or whatever, or doing 10 projects averagely, I guess. I don't know. Let me start over. Building a network is super important because it's everything. That's where all of your clients are going to come from. That's where all of anybody who can support you is in a network. And if you can't find a network, you need to build a network. And if you can't build a network, maybe you aren't going to have a career then, because that's all it is. It's a people industry. It's a service industry. And if there's no people to service, what's going to happen? You got to do it. And no one's going to invite you to a network. No one's going to build you a network. You have to do it yourself. You got to find your own clients. You got to turn your friends into clients. You got to turn your clients into your friends and make them want to record with you again. And you got to take action. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Nobody is going to come to you and be like, hey, do you record? If you've never told a person that you record, So it's all about constantly taking the first step, even if it feels like you should be on the second step. You still need to take the first step every time, because everybody, until you have a reputation that precedes you, you only have your work or you have nothing. So you have to sell yourself if you don't have work, and if you've already sold yourself, you got to sell yourself again if they don't take your work, because you still don't have work. You know what I mean? So it's all, for education, learning more, mentorship, internship, getting clients, it's all about network. And it's actually kind of, especially for, I don't know about you guys, but I was not always the most extroverted person. So the type of person who can sit in a room for 18 hours listening to a snare drum is not also the same person who's the best at wheeling and dealing, but it's a skill, and it's a skill you have to learn. There's no choice. No one who has been doing it for 40 years doesn't talk to anybody. Now, maybe 80 years ago, that was the thing, when there were 2 people who could do it, but there's 2 million people who can do it now. So, what's different? What's different about you? Well, you were the guy that was there. You always have to be the guy that's there. That means you got to go. You got to go places.